As I mentioned before, the next session will be one of the most important presentation of SeeRRI to show you the outcome and to let you hear the story from the territories themselves. And in this session, I would like to introduce the chair, Jens Ørding Hansen. So Dr. Hansen is a senior researcher at Nordland Research Institute, which is the coordinator institution of the SeeRRI projects. So Jens will be the chair today to ask territory question, very interesting question that he has working very hard on it, and to share with you the story. So Jens, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nien. Yes, I'm honored to be chairing this session where we will hear from the 3 SeeRRI territories of B30 in Catalonia first, and then Nordland in Norway, and finally Lower Austria, which is in Austria. But before that, before we get to B30, I would like to ask Nien first. Why, Nien, did you choose these 3 territories to invite them into the SeeRRI project? Because you are the one who launched the whole project. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you very much. I hope that, okay, do I need to do something? Maybe I'll just stand there.
Please.
This question brought me back to 4 years ago. We received the recommendation from 16 partners at that time want to join the consortium, and they recommended 10 different territories to be in the consortium. However, we have only 2 million euro. We cannot afford that many. So we decided with 2 million euro, the best way to make impact is to limit the territories down to 3 territories. And then we invite other territories to be our network of affiliated territories. And why were these 3 territories chosen? First of all, they were very good at doing smart specialization strategy and responsible research innovation. So we need some territories that do good both so that we can find a way to integrate them. And second, what is unique in SeeRRI process is that we try to tackle different challenges from different angles. So for Catalan and B30, we have the collaboration between the regional government and the university. For Lower Austria, we have the collaboration between regional government and the cluster, the plastic and mechanic plastic cluster, and they actually belong to the regional initiative as well. But in Nordland, it's another different setting that we have. We managed to bring the civil society organization. If I can translate the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise as a non-governmental and non-profit organization, and they take care for the enterprise in Norway, but we also think they can represent for the civil society as well. So in Nordland, we have the collaboration between the regional government and CSO. So if you see, there's different combination of regional government and different actors like academic, business, and civil society. And therefore, we want to look at the challenge through different angle, and we figure out even they tackle different challenge, different combination, but the process still work. That is one validation of the SeeRRI process, and that's the reason why we chose them.
Thank you, Nien. So now let's get to it. B30, we have here on the stage Tatiana Fernández, who represents the Catalan government, and we have Xavier Ariño, who is from the Autonomous University of Barcelona.
Yes, we are the Catalan team, and we are composed by the Universitat Autònoma of Barcelona. I'm responsible of strategic projects, and they're responsible of the coordinating unit of Smart Specialisation Strategy of the Catalan government, Tatiana. So when we started the project, both of us, we have the question about how the Smart Specialization strategies and how the universities can contribute to create a more responsible research and innovation ecosystem, and how can move towards the SDGs. To test new methodologies and tools, we focus on our pilot in a small area in Catalonia, which is the B30 territory. But exactly, what is B30? This afternoon, we will have a specific session to talk about B30 and to describe and discuss about the B30. But just to give you some small details about B30, I think that it's interesting because it's a bottom-up initiative. It's a group of 23 municipalities that, together with some research centers, with university, with other representatives of the territory, join together to promote the socio-economic development of this rather industrial area. So it is a very interesting model of ecosystem, and here in this ecosystem, the UAB, our university, is playing a central, or maybe even a leading role in the system. In this pilot, our aim was main through co-creation processes, identify common challenges, co-designing plans to address these challenges, taking into account that we are dealing with a very complex system. So we need a very systemic approach to address the complexity of the ecosystem. Tatiana.
Yes, I don't know if this works, but how I... Okay. In the B30, we work on a transformative shared agenda focused on the challenge of zero waste, and understanding the systemic challenge and mapping key stakeholders and initiatives had been the first step of the process. We organized many workshops and meetings with the regional stakeholders to work on this particular challenge. And during this process, the most important thing was trying to understand why in a territory where the people are and the institutions are so aware of the challenge of circularity, they are doing so many initiatives, but many times these initiatives have a lower impact than expected or are not transformative at all. And this was the main challenge. And the answer that we have found to this question that we ask ourselves all the time is that without systemic perspective, without coordination, and without collective action, transformation was not possible. And in our territory, the shared agendas is our way to implement the SeeRRI process, and they are based on a shared and systemic understanding of territorial challenges and on a portfolio of actions to move the system in the desired directions. So please.
Yes, Tatiana. And I think that one of the factors that probably has given us to the B30 good results and a relatively high impact is the fact that the SeeRRI project is connected with many other actions, initiatives, activities that we are carrying out in the B30 or in Catalonia as a whole. That means that during this time of the project, we have been able to create a sort of a narrative, storytelling for the territory, and this narrative help us to align many activities, many different activities and projects, and also this narrative is easier to be understood by the stakeholders of the territory. One important point also is that all these initiatives have to be supported by a general, I could say, conceptual framework as sustainable transitions, have innovative transformations, etc. Consequently, this narrative provides a sort of umbrella, a common logic for all the actions, for all the activities that we are carrying out. And it's generating also a lot of synergies and a lot of complementarities among projects. And this narrative can be applied not only at the B30, but also to the global Catalonia.
Okay, and then to finish,
I would like to intervene here because otherwise I start feeling a bit superfluous up here.
Yeah, but we have no presentation.
You can read about the B30 in the booklet on page 12 to 13. So we have all the territories introduced in the booklet, and B30 is on page 12 to 13. And I have prepared a few questions for you. So I would say that first that my own background is in the field of corporate governance, and corporate governance is all about how to motivate and incentivize people to do the things you want them to do. So some of my questions for the panels today will be related to that. So, Xavier, you have mentioned the collaboration between the university and the Catalan government. How about the other groups of the quadruple helix? And in particular, I want to ask you about industry, because B30 is very much an industrial district. It says here, as you write in the booklet, there's a very high concentration of industry. So industry is very important. So, Xavier, I would like to ask you, how did you get industrial actors interested in the SeeRRI process, and how will you motivate them to be committed to your shared agenda going forward?
Well, I think that companies, industry, as any other stakeholder of the territory, will be willing to participate if they understand properly that sharing interest, their interests and their priorities with other stakeholders, and building a common agenda dealing with these priorities and with this interest can represent a benefit for them, but for any stakeholder, that it's true for any stakeholder. So because at the end, the agenda will create new business opportunities, and the concept of also can create the concept of shared value. So probably we don't need to do nothing special if the challenge is understood properly.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you are appealing to their self-interest to a great extent.
Yeah.
But what is their self-interest in this? How do they have an interest in achieving your goal of zero waste? Can you talk a little bit about that?
For this reason, it's very important to start the process of identifying the challenge altogether in a co-creation process, because they have the opportunity to express their interests, their ideas about what are their priorities, what are their challenges for the institution, for the company. And then you are creating these possibilities to synergies between the companies and the concept of the shared agenda.
Yes, okay. Yeah. I would also like to ask, and this is a question maybe for Tatiana, I think. So you are, of course, intimately familiar with the Smart Specialization strategy in B30. I have read the literature on Smart Specialization to some extent, and one thing that's often emphasized there is the complexity of Smart Specialization. So Smart Specialization is a combination of a bottom-up and top-down approach, and it requires very strong institutions to carry it out successfully. And now what you want to do is to add even more complexity into this by adding RRI and this shared agenda and a commitment to zero waste. So I'm wondering how you will deal with this complexity. Is it feasible? I mean, the complexity, I think it would drive me crazy. It's driving me crazy already. So how will you deal with it?
Yeah, for me, this is not the right question. The issue is not how we introduce complexity, but how we deal with complexity, because we live in a complex world, and if we cannot treat the complex problems with a linear mind. So I think that a smart specialization strategy have not been so transformative as the European Commission and all the methodology promised. And therefore, we need to change and to rethink smart specialization strategy. And I think that smart specialization strategies have two main challenges. The first one is the transformative challenge, how research and innovation can contribute to more sustainable and inclusive development and to more sustainable pathways. And this means transforming the way we produce and the way we consume. And as Anne said, it's about rethinking our relation to nature and to the planet also. And the second very important challenge is the stakeholders' engagement. This is a big challenge, and I would like to reformulate this like a challenge of moving from the collective awareness, because all of us are aware of climate change problems, but we need to move from this collective awareness towards collective action, towards collective transformative action. And this is what we are trying to do with shared agendas. And the world is complex, so our answers from governments and universities are complex too, because if not, they cannot be transformative.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I would like to hear from you, having gone through the SeeRRI process over the last 2.5 years, or almost 3 years. Is there anything that you find particularly interesting or surprising from this process? Or heartwarming or inspiring? Just if you can just name one thing, or two things.
So I have to say that SeeRRI was my first European project. And it has been a very interesting process of, at the beginning, everything was chaos, because the researchers came with a very clear idea of what they wanted to do, and then the territories were like, no, this is not useful to us. We need to find a compromise and a way that what we are developing is useful for the territories and for public policies, and we need to find this common language. And it has been, as Nian said before, it has been a very challenging process, but I have to say that we are very happy with the results, and for us, we have changed the policies in Catalonia because of this project. And we have also changed the relation of working together, universities and government. So the transformative impact of the process is amazing. And it was like magic, no? Sometimes everything fit together. And this has been a very interesting process, yeah.
I would like to add a last comment. And from the university perspective, I will use a sentence from the presentation of Anne. From ivory tower to save space for territorial co-creation of responses. I think that it's a very good definition.
Thank you. So we now have on the stage our team, our panel from Lower Austria, where we have Simone Hagenauer from an organization called EcoPlus, and we have Klaus Hitzenberger from a company called Innovationsoptimierer, Austrian company. And we have Marianne Hörlesberger, who is from the Austrian Institute of Technology. And I should say that EcoPlus and AIT are partners in the SeeRRI project. Klaus is an advisor to the SeeRRI project. And it seems that Klaus is not listed in the program. However, he has contributed to the booklet, and in fact, the last words in this booklet are contributed by Klaus. So he has the honor of having the last word in the booklet. So I think you have prepared, Simone, a presentation.
Is it there? Or,
and let's hope we can somehow get it on the screen.
Looks good. Can I move it myself, or maybe like this? No. Well, slides are overestimated anyway, right? So maybe I try without slides as well. Hi everybody, this is the Austrian gang in the SeeRRI project, and then actually we have more Austrians over there in the back. Yeah. I start with Andrea Kastler waving there from AIT, supporting us throughout the project, and then we have
okay, yeah, excuse me, and now
Tom
we have
Gröger,
slides.
and now it works, but yeah, Tom Gröger, who is the Plastics and Mechatronics Cluster Manager in Lower Austria. And then here on stage, as already introduced, Klaus and Marianne, and we would like to quickly share our story from Lower Austria with you. Let me start by saying where I come from. I work for EcoPlus, the Lower Austrian Business Agency. We're also a cluster management organization. So I belong to the cluster community, which is very much about competitiveness and excellence. And in Lower Austria, we're measured against the economic and innovation strategy. So this is my background, and we heard about different perspectives already a lot today. I'm also very much involved in the last years in the smart specialization process. So I know this complex concept that you mentioned and how to translate it into practice. But I also have to say that there are few people in Lower Austria who still are able to pronounce smart specialization strategies. So the complex concept is one thing, and then what you do in practice is something different. That's what I wanted to say. So when we got involved in this SeeRRI project, and that has been mentioned also several times already today, it was a combination of two complex systems, and it was confusion at the beginning, and as Tatiana said, it was like, what are you talking about? We had to break it down somehow. And within Lower Austria, we started from a specialization point of view. So one of our smart specialization topics in Lower Austria is additive manufacturing, 3D printing. We got involved in the project and thought, yeah, let's continue working on that. And then whatever RRI means, we will find a way to introduce that. Didn't work. Then we went to the highest level, like let's look at the whole Lower Austrian innovation ecosystem and let's see how we can introduce aspects of RRI, and it was just theoretical and nobody understood what we wanted to do. So we ended up by concentrating on, actually a challenge, and that's the discussion on plastics and the harmful impacts it has on our world, and the very concerned plastics value chain. So we concentrated because through EcoPlus the plastics cluster was involved, we concentrated on that, and we looked very much on public engagement, then of course anticipation, so the environmental impacts in the future and how can we deal with the sins of the past, as Harald has mentioned it, and then also of course gender equality. And we defined, after more than a year, one common question, and that was how can the plastics value chain, or even the innovation system around, contribute to new designs of research, development and innovation to achieve a CO2 neutral economy. That was a hard work to get to that question already. Sounds simple, but to share very quickly some learnings from that process. First of all, the big question of public engagement. So usually the plastics cluster stakeholders look like the guy on the left side, men between 40 and 50 in suits and ties. And with this SeeRRI workshops, we try to involve other stakeholders beyond the usual suspects. So we looked at really the balance between women and men. Of course, we had researchers and entrepreneurs and also civil servants. We work very closely with the regional government, but we also involved the University of Arts, for example, students from the University of Arts, and also media representatives. To share also one failure, we worked hard on involving NGOs, but it turned out that this is difficult because usually we do not work with them. So I was very thankful for again, this appel, this strengthening the notes to look out for those people. We are working on it, but we're not there yet. This is just some impressions, but you saw it in the film as well. We did have fun in these workshops, indeed. And it proved to be a very good idea to do, sorry Angel, I took you, to do these workshops not in office buildings, but out in the woods. Two learnings. This foresight exercise was I think, really excellent. Thank you, Marianne and Andrea, for helping us through that. It's something that you need to practice to really think into the future, and it was for me personally very, very interesting also because it's and was a great opportunity to quickly get to know people. If they start to think, if they start to speak about their future in 20 years and how they see it, you really understand who are you talking with, in which direction is this person thinking. And you need to practice. And the second aspect was, for me, fascinating to transform from, or to go from a very complex starting point, addressing all the influencing factors, to storytelling in the end. So through this foresight process to come to 4 stories, beautifully also illustrated by Mario from Vidu, it was excellent to see. And then before Jens got really nervous because I'm too long, I just wanted to quickly share 2 of the results on the, I would say, institutional results, so not only in our minds, our personal learnings, but on organizational level within EcoPlus, the Lower Austrian Business Agency. We have 1 new position in addition to the cluster management teams. Position called technology evangelist. Don't ask me how they got to that name, but a person who is now focusing on identifying collaborative innovation projects to reduce CO2 and to involve also a broader public engagement in this kind of projects within EcoPlus. And then within the ecosystem, the plastics innovation system, we wanted to continue the discussions and the development started in these SeeRRI workshops, and the result was to found an association called Austrian Carbon Cycle Circle with 2 main goals: to further improve this communication, not only within the value chain, but also with NGOs, for example, and with the ministries, policymakers, and secondly, to work on projects together. More than 5 minutes, but I hope fast enough.
Thank you very much, Simone. I would like first to ask Klaus, I think, because Klaus, you mentioned in the booklet on page 46, you praised the SeeRRI project and its impact. But can you elaborate a little bit on, from your perspective, what is the impact of SeeRRI as you see it?
So I would say the main impact is that during the whole project, and especially in the stakeholder workshop, it's the perspective which changed for a lot of people. For instance, Harald Bleier, who was mechatronics and plastic cluster manager, and now he's the technology evangelist. Also my personal work changed a lot. So you can read in the booklet, maybe we have some discussions on that over coffee or during lunch. And especially some managers in the stakeholder processes which have seen, hey, I'm working in the plastics industry. I wasn't aware that the image is so bad and the impact which I'm doing in the world. For instance, if you imagine a world without plastics, if you need blood when you have a surgery, how can this blood given to you without plastics? So there is some pros and cons for all these things. And the impact is this association which has formed, the impact is organizational change in EcoPlus, and the impact is that a lot of leaders have seen this process in Lower Austria and they demand more. And so now we are forming a CO2 reduction project, a cooperative project where medium-sized companies in Lower Austria work on how to reduce their carbon footprint for the next years. And this is an impact I think we can be very proud in this project. And thank you to Simone and thank you to Marianne. You did a good work in Lower Austria.
And all the others.
Thank you very much, Klaus. And getting back to the work you've done in SeeRRI, I would like to ask you, Marianne, you have been closely involved in the workshops in SeeRRI in Lower Austria. And I think it's very impressive how you have been able to engage stakeholders, not only bringing them to the workshops, but it has even led to initiatives for the future, such as this new organization, the Austrian Carbon Cycle Circle that was mentioned. And so I would like to ask you, what has been the key for you to involve stakeholders, getting stakeholders interested in SeeRRI?
Yeah, I think if you would like really to change something, to have this impact of a change, stakeholders are very crucial in this process. And we have a specific approach proposed here in SeeRRI. This comes when you have to include stakeholders from science and research, from education, from industry and business, from public administration, from civil society. And these are not on the quadruple helix, it's more, it's the SeeRRI stakeholder approach. And in addition, as Simone already mentioned, we had already also media with us, and I think this is also very important to produce messages, to produce news, or to communicate fact-based the messages. And then this is one aspect. I think then the next aspect is you have to give the stakeholders, or you have to provide a benefit for them. Benefit or added value in a broader sense. However, they have to feel they get something, or they suffer from something. And then you get a commitment. And very important here is also a networker. And we who have a lot of connections. And this was Harald Bleier here in Lower Austria. He cannot be with us today, but Thomas Kröger is represents him very well. And this networking, and there is trust. Trust is very important. Trust, so in this network, in this organization as Ecoplus and so on. And when you have this, you can do the process, you can anticipate the future, you can, as we have also these dimensions in RRI, anticipating, open, transparent, reflective, and responsive and adaptive to change. And with that, you do strategies, you co-create strategies for responsible research and innovation.
Thank you, Mariana. I think you have done a great job. However, to make this session interesting, I think we should not just celebrate ourselves and talk about how wonderful we are. So I would like to ask you maybe a slightly provocative question too. Okay. Which is that since you are focusing on the plastics industry and you have influential actors from that industry in the project, how do you make sure that the SeeRRI process in Lower Austria actually promotes RI rather than being exploited by the plastics industry to promote their own agenda? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, I think we have managed this because the stakeholders got aware to think in a holistic way, to take into account the whole value chain in the plastic sector. And they also are aware that they have to open, or they open up their mind. They take into account all the other aspects from society and from even students and so on. I think not in the narrow way. We consider RRI in a broader thinking for responsibility, sustainability, for societal impact in this way. And I think we could manage to initiate this with our workshops. It's not, for me, it's not always to talk about, but to provide, to do something, and then you create facts. That is doing together, working together.
Maybe one sentence to add on that one. If as a manager of a company see it as something which you fear, then it's dangerous. But they have seen this is an opportunity to think in that way. And once it's a business opportunity, then it's implemented. And that's I would say, therefore, I'm pretty sure that they work continuously in that direction.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Well, you also, you mentioned before, Marianne, opening their minds. And you write in the booklet about how the challenge is for the plastics industry to develop an awareness of their own responsibility. But that is a slightly different angle, or slightly different emphasis than we just heard from B30, where Xavier said that they emphasized appealing to the self-interest of the actors. Is that also an element in Lower Austria, that you appeal to the motivation that creating a climate-compatible, environmentally friendly, resource-conserving economy can actually benefit the plastics industry? Is that also part of it? Self-interest?
I think, of course, because they are interested to change because they suffer. You have to know that you doesn't get engineers for the plastics industry. This is very difficult, and therefore they are interested to develop in this direction, so that if the plastics industry have a good image, gets a good image, they will attract more people working for them, but they also would like to work in a responsible way. And this is, this was a clear result, I think. Well?
Yeah, to take up the challenging part. I mean, of course, I think the big danger is that they will always think into the direction of technological solutions, right? And this might be a solution, but not necessarily. If we think of the picture with the glasses once again. So I think the challenge for this carbon circular association will be to keep the spirit of SeeRRI and to involve people, for example, who has inspired us in this project, like Carlos, or like today Anne, and to involve, to bring these visions to the technological community a little bit more in the future. And that will remain a challenge. I fully agree with you. It's not everything pink and rose. Yeah.
May I add one more? This association is not only acting in Lower Austria. We had already a meeting with all the other parts of Austria, and furthermore, they are connected to Switzerland and Germany already. And I think this is also a great work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I think we now have to move on to the Nordland team, so thank you very much. Okay, so we now have the Nordland team on the stage. We have from the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise, we have Anders Poulsen, and in the middle here we have Eivind Somerset. So the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise is a partner in SeeRRI. And then we have Åge Mariussen from Nordland Research Institute in Nordland, where I am also from. Unfortunately, we do not have representatives on the stage from the Nordland County Council, so the regional government of Nordland, even though they are a very important partner in the SeeRRI project. But because of COVID-19 restrictions, they were not able to travel. However, they have prepared a little greeting to us by video, which lasts a few minutes, and I hope we can now put on the video from Nordland County Council, where Liv Rask Sørensen will say a few words to us.
Hello, I'm Liv Rask Sørensen, and I work as an assistant director in the Nordland County Council. We in Nordland are very sorry that we can't participate in the SeeRRI final conference in Barcelona, but we have made a little greeting to you from our county, Nordland, in northern Norway. When Nordland County Council joined the SeeRRI project, we were faced with several major strategic planning tasks. Nordland contains a quarter of the Norwegian coastline. Many people have stakes in development along the coast, and many livelihoods are linked to the resources along the coast and in the nearby sea areas. National expectations for regional planning indicated that the Sustainable Development Goals in the United Nations should be used as a basic for the planning works. The SeeRRI projects focus on responsibility for the environment and the global community fit well with the objectives of the regional plan for land management. If the coast of Nordland is to be a pantry for the world in the future, accountability and innovation are essential. The SeeRRI project announced a method by which participation from a broad range of interest groups, including academia, would give a new knowledge that was important for the development of the region. A balanced development must be based on knowledge, and innovation must take place within the regional administration too. These dimensions were part of the SeeRRI project, and we saw that SeeRRI could be a great help in our planning processes. We also saw that the broad and active participation of stakeholders in the project could provide valuable knowledge and expertise for the regional planners. The participatory methodology of SeeRRI has been the inspiration for internal seminars focusing on participation processes and involvement, and will continue to inspire the implementation of the regional planning strategy. Above all, participating in the SeeRRI has reinforced focus on knowledge-based development in which outreach and involvement are important measures to achieve regional goals. We have also used the experience into other development processes. Nordland has a rich nature, and we find that many people want to come to experience our nature and culture. We have many small communities that, especially in the summer, experience an explorative development in tourism. I want to show you a little film that describes a course designed to include locals in planning processes that have implementation for their community. Thank you for listening and enjoy the great scenario in the movie.
Det kom ut et punkt der septiktanken var full, og vi hadde ikke vann igjen i brønnen.
Krasjkurs er noe jeg har hørt ordet før, så jeg var jo egentlig ikke klar over hva det dreier seg om.
Krasjkurset var jo en litt sånn oppvåkner på det her med å tenke større og helhetlig rundt turisme. De her spørsmålene fikk oss til å tenke og kanskje se turistene i sammenheng med andre ting som vi kanskje ikke hadde tenkt sånn ordentlig på.
Det er klart at det er mange bekymringer om det her at det blir for mye turisme, og det går utover livskvaliteten til folk.
Vi ønsker å få hjelp til å finne gode løsninger sånn at alle kunne trives og ha det bra.
Gjennom krasjkurset så prøvde vi å gå gjennom hele systemet på Egom, fra du kommer inn til Egom til du kjører gjennom gården der så det bor folk, og så ut til utmarska.
Så kurset var jo sett i et system som har forskjellige løsninger og forskjellige problemstillinger som ikke vi har tenkt på egentlig.
Vi har en idé om at vi skal styre denne turiststrømmen i stedet for å bli overkjørt av den. Og den kunnskapen om hvordan vi skulle gjøre det, den måtte vi lære.
Okay, that was the greeting from Liv in Nordland. And now when I look at the panel, it strikes me as a little bit ironic that even though Norway is one of the leading countries in Europe when it comes to gender equality, we now have 4 gentlemen from Nordland on the stage. But I can assure you that in the SeeRRI project as a whole, in Nordland, we do have a good gender balance. And we also have, of course, we have Nien in the project, and I think with her strong personality, she counts for at least 3 persons. So we do have good gender balance. Okay. First of all here, I would like to ask you, Anders. I know that you played an important role in attracting stakeholders to our workshops in Nordland, from the business community especially. And I would like to ask you, from your perspective, what was the most important outcome of the workshops, and what kind of feedback have you received from your members, your member organizations that you brought in as stakeholders?
First of all, I would like to say that having the companies taking part in the workshops was not difficult at all. It's almost like hitting the repeat button from what Xavier said, from B30 said earlier. They immediately saw that it was in their own interest being part of the discussion about coastal area management and planning in the future, because they have their business, their actions in those areas, and they saw that it was very important to discuss with other stakeholders how can we manage this area, and what kind of conflicts, what kind of different interests do we have in those in the same areas. So it was quite easy to recruit the companies to the workshops. And to draw the line back to what Nien said earlier today about RRI, because the series is about RRI and implementing it in the daily life and in the business as well. But we were not thinking about telling what RRI is, but explaining it and showing it through the process. So I would like to say that getting people together, getting different stakeholders together, making them meet, talk to each other, get to know each other, listening to different interests, different point of views, different perspectives. That's maybe the first step in being responsible, because once you know that there are different differences and different interests, you cannot avoid taking that into account when you do your own planning, when you do your own strategies, and you make your own implementation of your own decisions. And when you do that, you have become more responsible. And that applies not only to the companies, the industries, but that applies to all stakeholders. So that's an outcome I think it's very important to be aware of.
Yes, thank you. And I think that also ties into what Marianne talked about developing an awareness among different interest groups. I think we achieved that in Nordland, getting different groups, oil industry, environmental organizations and so on together, and making them understand each other a little bit better. So yes, but Ivan, I would like to ask you. So we have often talked about how RRI is already embedded in Norwegian culture to some extent, right? Gender equality, inclusion, openness, these kinds of values. So from your perspective, does it mean that there is no need for the SeeRRI project?
I think that most of the keywords in RRI is more or less the same as we have in the Scandinavian model of how we build up the society. And it's also a history here where Nordland take part in the Smart Specialisation platform and had in that way introduced some of the mechanism which we took further on in this workshop. And many know that this is a way to make a more relevant and better platform for regional politics, for regional development, and so many of the stakeholders was a bit familiar with what we was talking about and what we want to get out of the process. I will say that the most difficult thing we had in the planning of the workshops was that the workshops come in the middle of the COVID-19 epidemic, and that was very difficult to get. We lost some of important key personnel because of restrictions due to the COVID-19. So it was a difficult setting.
Okay, thank you, Eivind. And we don't have much time, but Olga, my question for you. So you, Olga, you have done research about regional development policy for many years in Nordland and beyond. And the question I would like to ask you is, from your perspective, why do regions need to get involved in R&I policies? And why do R&I policies need regions?
The action is going on in the regions. That's where industrial interests and ordinary citizens' interests, environmental interests, and nature collide, and it can create chaos. So, if you don't do this on the regional level, you have a big problem, because if you move it out and go into a national level, or think about this as a kind of top-down policy from some kind of supranational institution, it doesn't work. You have to do it regionally, and you have to do it through a co-creation process. And what we, I think, as suggested here, what we succeeded in was to generate a process which we as researchers could never have done alone, because we didn't have the legitimacy to do this. We managed to cooperate with the two gentlemen to the right of me, and we managed to get a kind of institutional support from our contract with the EU on the SeeRRI project, and we got support from IT in Austria, and that provided a very strong legitimacy for our workshops, and it gave a kind of legitimacy for discussing on a much broader basis than just focusing on more narrow self-interest. There is a kind of saying in Norway that, along the coast, that there are very sharp conflicts, and there is one person standing on each island, and they are just screaming to each other. And we brought this together around a table, and that created a kind of energy which resulted in our scenarios, and which resulted in a kind of common platform. So now we are talking together, so we have kind of changed the system, as was mentioned earlier. We don't need an innovation, we don't need a system of innovation, we need to innovate the system. And that was what we did. We have actually recreated the whole context of discussion of these important issues which can drive development forward and which can result in a sustainable development.
Okay, thank you, Olga. And now I think we have to move on to the last segment of this session, where we will have all three territories on the stage. So I would like, Olga, if you stay where you are. Okay. And then, thank you, Anders and Ivan. And then I will invite Tatiana to come back to the stage, and Simone. So for these last 10 minutes, so we now have three experts on smart specialization and RI on the stage. And if you read the literature on smart specialization and RI, then sometimes it's mentioned that there is an inherent tension between these two concepts, even though they are both promoted by the European Commission. There is an inherent tension between them because smart specialization focuses on promoting economic growth in regions, like finding ways to promote growth. So it has a strong economic focus. Whereas RI, of course, is about acting responsibly, which may sometimes be at the expense of economic growth, right? So in that sense, I think there's a tension between the two concepts. And I would like each of you to give me your perspective on what is the key for you to reconciling the goals of RI and RIS3, or smart specialization. So I don't know who wants to start.
Okay. When you ask your question, the first thought I had, one has to understand that all regions had innovation strategies and economic strategies and other strategies before the smart specialization concept was introduced. So, not the other way around. And we had to understand the concept and then adapt to it. But specifically to your question, I would like to address just two aspects. One is incentivizing actors of change, was how Johan formulated it. And the other one is about monitoring and evaluation. And both aspects are key components of smart specialization. So one example for incentivizing from Lower Austria is the example that the new research, technology and innovation program, which is part of the implementation of our smart specialization strategy, has now a new feature, a new incentive for research projects which involve civil society. So these kind of research projects get an add-on, an additional funding, if it makes sense and if they manage to involve civil society. And that could be a way. We don't know yet if it works or not because it's a new program, but we would be happy to let you know in maybe 1 or 2 years. And the other aspect, monitoring, I would like to add another perspective to both Johan's statement saying that monitoring will become more important in the future, and then Anne's statement, which I like very much, like if you have to deal with a moving target and you have to dance with the system, yes, I love the picture. But from the implementation perspective, from the Regional Development Agency perspective, one also has to understand that monitoring has a big impact on what you're doing. So you get what you measure in many cases. And therefore you need smart indicators. So far, the clusters in Lower Austria are measured against the economic strategy goals. However, they do a lot they contribute a lot also to our climate and energy program and of course the digitalization strategy. This is not monitored yet. But we think about that for the next programming period. We're working on that exactly.
Okay, thank you, Simone. And maybe you, Tatiana, if you have...
I don't understand this trade-off because companies, they cannot pursue economic growth without taking into account sustainability. So there is no trade-off. It's not, business cannot be successful, cannot be competitive if they don't integrate sustainability in their strategies, if they not reorient their business model towards the generation of shared value, environmental, social, and economic. So we need to find these new ways. We need to reorient the value change in order to find ways to be more sustainable, because if not, there will be chaos and the end of the world. So there is not a trade-off. There is no possibility of being competitive without integrating sustainable goals in business models. And this about monitoring, it's very important because all our monitoring systems in governments, in the European Commission, here it's a message for the European Commission because how they are asking us to monitor our European projects and our investments, it's against sustainability transition because we are looking always for allocative efficiency, for making efficient what we all have now, but it's not about that, it's about dynamic efficiency. We need to find new methodologies, new indicators in order to measure transformative outcomes. How are we contributing to transitions? And the European Commission should pay for that and should ask responsibility to businesses, to governments, in order to achieve this transformation and these transformative outcomes. So we need to finish to talk about this trade-off between economy, growth, and sustainability because, so.
Okay, thank you. I consider that an optimistic perspective, that there is no trade-off between the two. But now, finally, let's hear from Olga. What is your viewpoint on this?
Well, I think we have to look at the dark history of R&I policy, because R&I policy actually comes from confrontations between empires and wars and countries. And so there's a lot of, in the traditional R&I policy, there's a lot of, if you look back to the 60s and 70s, There was focus on the industrial military complex and investment in university education to promote that. And that definition has now been changed with RRI. It's a new way of looking at RRI. It's a redefinition of RRI policy. What is RRI policy? And it's also, this redefinition also means that R&I policy is repositioned. It's no longer a question of competition between countries or blocks or something like that. It's a discussion of how to create a sustainable world. And I think this redefinition and repositioning of the R&I policy field has strengthened the position of regions and what we call territories. So there is a kind of if you develop the kind of institutional frameworks where regions have stronger impact on R&I policy, you also develop a kind of institutional framework which makes it meaningful to talk about R&I policy promoting becoming more responsible.
Okay, thank you, Åge, and thanks to all of you. I think we can now end the session and maybe take a few minutes break before Carlos will present the implementation pathway. Okay, just sitting on your chairs. Yeah.